In the ancient halls of the Valari consensus, silence reigned like a tomb. The golden arches gleamed in the dim ambient light as if mourning something yet unspoken. Around the circular chamber, 27 species sat cloaked in regal silence. Elders, war kings, memory singers, code queens. They were the oldest, the most powerful. The gods among stars dot, and they were afraid. On the days, a holo flicker played. Footage, no evidence. It wasn't a war record or a threat broadcast. It was worse. It was a human. Just one. She stood with her arms raised as her colony burned around her. The scorched world of Silixa 3, glassed by the Zaineri just a cycle ago, flickered in the background. Of the recording, the human woman's body was bleeding, her breathing erratic. Her people had been annihilated. But her eyes, every elder in the chamber saw them and couldn't forget them. Eyes that did not plead, that did not forgive, that did not fear. Her name, extracted from planetary archives, was Nayla Voss, a botanist. A botanist had brought the galactic order to its knees. She's dead now, rumbled the Jirak Warchener, his tusks twitching with restrained fury. Let it end. No, hissed the Ciliad Dreamweaver. You misunderstand. Death is not the end for them. It's the beginning. Whispers. Whispers in languages older than starlight. The footage skipped forward. Not to her death, but to what came after. The shattering. 1 week after Nayla Voss fell, 3 moons in Zaineri territory blinked out of gravitational existence. The cause, unknown. No weapons were fired. No signatures of dimensional shift. Just gone. Then a rogue signal human in origin cracked the unbreakable firewall of the Valari data shield. It didn't request entry. It burned through. And all it said was, "We remember Nayla, 10 parsecs away." In the ruins of a trading outpost on Kiran's belt, a lone scavenger adjusted his respirator and ducked into the crumpled remains of what used to be a central garden. Human ruins, almost sacred now, dangerous to explore, deadly to misunderstand. But Vera's soul had never followed rules, especially not galactic ones. She was half Ranthi, half Venari bloodlines that had been hunted on both sides. Her skin shimmered faintly under ultraviolet light, and her hair, silver like spilled frost, twisted as if wind followed her indoors. She was a thief, a good one. She knew how to sneak past automated drones, how to mask body heat, how to hack low-tier sentries. But what she found buried beneath the soil of this broken place made her hesitate. A seed, encased in carbon stasis, still humming. She didn't understand why her fingers trembled. Seed packets don't hum, she whispered. They do. Came a voice behind her, if they're human. Vera spun, gun raised, crouch balanced. The figure behind her wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding coffee. What? Peace offering, the man said. His voice was strange, too steady, not clipped like most planetary accents. You've been in this ruin for hours. Figured you'd need something warm. I don't drink poisons from strangers. It's human coffee, he said with a wry smile. You'd be surprised how many wars it's ended. Her instincts screamed. She scanned his silhouette. No visible weapons, no armor, just black utility gear. Functional, dust-smeared. Human military, old military. Before their disappearance, you're supposed to be extinct, she said, slowly. Yeah, that's what they wanted you to think. They sat together beside the fractured fountain. The stars above Kiran's belt had shifted since her last visit. She didn't speak for a long time. Neither did he. When he finally offered his name, Relin, it didn't sound human at all. You're not like the ones I've read about, she said, after sipping the damn coffee and hating how good it tasted. No, he agreed. We're not. She let herself study his face, scarred down one cheek, the kind that looked accidental. Tired eyes, the kind that had seen too much. But his hands, they cradled the cup with careful grace. You're here for the seed, she guessed. I'm here for Nayla's garden, he said softly. She blinked. Who? She was a botanist. Planted seeds on this outpost before it fell. Most of them died with the soil. But one lived. That one. He pointed to the capsule she'd found. Vera glanced at it, then at him. And why do you want it? Because that's how we fight now. Not with guns. Not with fleets. With memory. With growth. With things the consensus can't kill. You're joking. He turned, and this time, when she met his eyes, there was no joke in them, only pain and fire. They moved through the ruins together. Vera didn't know why she let him stay. He didn't act like a soldier. He didn't smell like one. And he never asked questions she didn't want to answer. They shared supplies, stories. He laughed once at one of her barbs. She smiled once at one of his jokes. And when the night wind howled through the broken glass, they curled on opposite sides of a derelict habdome and didn't sleep. Until she whispered, "Why did they disappear?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because we were never welcome. You shattered their moons. We shattered control," he said quietly. "Not life. Never life." Vera stared at the ceiling. "You're not what I expected, you, either." "What did you expect?" He paused. Then, gently, more venom, less wonder. She turned to face him. "I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm not a ghost." She reached out, touched his hand. "No," she said, "you're not." The following morning, the sky above Kieran's belt turned black. Not with weather, not with warships. With code. Entire orbital relays collapsed. Drones began screaming, literally, emitting distress signals that looped fragments of ancient human songs. The stars overhead twisted. And the Volari fleet arrived. 30 vessels, siege class. "You brought them," Vera whispered. "I was just the flare," Relin said. "You're the fire. They'll kill us." "No," he said, and stood. And raised his hand. The entire planet vibrated. Below the crust, something woke. It was not a weapon. It was a message. Buried beneath the outpost, beneath thousands of others across the galaxy, were gardens. Machines that planted not just seeds, but memories, bio-coded stories, human thoughts in genetic code. And they sang. The Volari ships above heard the sound and began to shut down. One by one. Not destroyed, not disabled, but quieted. Like lullabies. For machines, Vera fell to her knees, hands over her ears. But Relin stood tall. "This is what she planted," he said. "Not bombs, not fleets, hope." Later, after the skies had gone still, and the Volari ships fled without a single shot fired, Vera touched the seed capsule again. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you listened." "To what?" "To the music." Relin stepped closer. The wind had picked up, dust spiraled around them, and when he touched her cheek, his fingers were trembling. "I was alone for a long time," he said. "So was I, and now, I don't know," she whispered. He leaned in. "Then let's find out." Their lips met, gentle at first, then firmer, not born of desperation or war, but of something quieter, older, like two survivors sharing warmth in a frozen galaxy. The kiss lingered even as the horizon began to bloom with green. Tiny shoots, tiny leaves. Nayla's garden was growing again, and the galaxy was listening. The stage was not a battlefield, but it felt like one. Across the crystal days of the Olisari Concord's council hall, ambassadors, delegates, and hiberns from 100 systems stared down at the human girl as if she were a malfunctioning artifact or a biohazard that had wandered into their precious marble dome. She cleared her throat, small and unsure under the weight of the stars. No one expected her to speak, least of all him. Ashen knelt in the gallery shadows above the dome's western wing, cloaked in the uniform of a Batraxi listening officer, his antennae pressed flat to his skull, hiding the heat that flushed his carapace. He'd followed her, voice here, not because he was assigned to, because he couldn't stop, because the moment she opened her mouth 3 cycles ago, the war stopped for him. And now she was about to speak again. They called her Echo. It wasn't her real name. Humans had names with shape and warmth, things that didn't translate well through the Concord's galactic trade tongue. But her voice translated perfectly. It always had. She wasn't born to be a weapon. She'd been grown in the back halls of a medical convoy ship as it fled the last scraps of Terran resistance. Her mother taught her old lullabies, half-remembered Earth songs, things even the AI didn't archive anymore, words no machine could recreate. The first time she sang, a child on the same ship had stopped seizing. The second time, an Olisari patrol let the ship go. The third time, a fleet died. That was when she stopped singing, but that was before she met Ashen. He'd heard the rumor first from a drunken command tech. The humans never had plasma, never had scale, never had shields. But they made a girl who sings, and the stars stop listening to us when she does. Ashen had laughed, until he didn't. He caught a recording, one that wasn't scrubbed, didn't have Concord filters over it. One someone had slipped through a leak in the internal comms ray. It was scratchy, corrupted, and looped. Just one phrase. "Don't be afraid, I'm here now." It sounded like nothing. It felt like breaking. And Ashen hadn't stopped listening since. "She can't possibly mean to argue," spat a delegate from the Nurokri Cradle Worlds, his voice a wet snarl as he gestured at Echo with all 6 of his rings flaring. "She's not even trained, not validated. She's not one of us. She's not meant to be," whispered Ashen. He knew she heard him. He saw her glance toward the shadows where he hid, even though he knew she couldn't see him. Her ears twitched, that strange human instinct again, like they always knew when they were being watched. She raised her chin. "I don't speak for the fleet. I don't speak for a planet. I only speak for one thing." "And what is that, mongrel?" sneered the Alasari first diplomat. Her voice was soft. "What you took from us." The room bristled. Ashen held his breath. Echo stepped forward on bare feet, the shimmer light reflecting off the thin skin over her collarbones, the thin silver lacing in her hair the only decoration. The Concord allowed her. She wore no weapons, no armor, just an old human scarf. It looked hand-woven, something too warm for space. But her voice was colder than vacuum. "You didn't just break our cities. You broke our stories. You burned the libraries. You silenced the songs. And now you sit here, choking on power, and ask why we don't kneel." The room didn't move. Ashen felt the moment hit him again. The one that always did right before she opened her voice fully. Right before things bent. She began to hum. It wasn't words this time. It wasn't even sound. Not exactly. It was something deeper. Like gravity made music. Like molecules remembered being part of stars and ached to go home. Ashen dropped to one knee without realizing it. His translator implant flickered. The Nurokri diplomat convulsed. A Threxian near the edge of the chamber threw off her rank collar and sobbed. And Echo sang. No lyrics, no performance. Just being. It was the sound of loss, the sound of children who'd never get tucked in again, the sound of lovers torn across galaxies, the sound of home after war. The song told the truth in ways no diplomat ever could. And as Ashen stared at her, he finally understood. It wasn't that she was a weapon. It was that they had forgotten what mercy felt like. After the song faded, the chamber stayed silent. The first diplomat tried to speak, but found his tongue dry. Echo turned and walked from the dais, each step quieter than the last. And when she passed Ashen's shadowed alcove, she paused. He stepped forward, reckless, breaking 1,000 oaths. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "I had to. They'll never let you walk free." She smiled, and it was nothing like her song. It was warmer, sharper. "Then run with me." They met again in the quiet part of the ship's underbelly, where engineers slept and stars were just rumors. Ashen stood like prey in the doorway, antennae half raised. "I don't understand you," he said. "Most don't. Why did you sing, knowing what it would do?" Echo leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "Because I needed them to listen. Not just hear, listen." He stepped forward. "And me?" She looked at him for a long time. "You were listening before anyone else. Their romance wasn't like the stories. It didn't unfold under stars or amid poetry. It began in silence. The first time she let him hear her hum alone, it wasn't powerful. It was just soft. A song about a place called spring, about blossoms he'd never seen, about rivers that used to run through her world." He sat beside her for hours, not speaking. And when she fell asleep on his shoulder, he didn't move. But the Concord wasn't done. They labeled her a subsonic threat. They branded her voice as cognitive interference warfare. They put a bounty on her vocal cords. Ashen read the notice in horror. He'd known they feared her. He hadn't realized they planned to dissect her. They fled 2 days later. No plan, no grand strategy. Just one old cargo runner and a star chart she remembered from a song lyric. He piloted, she sang. Not to break ships this time, but to soothe him when the stress got too much, to calm his fire-laced blood when their Stealth signature failed, to remind them both that somewhere, out there might still be a place where a human girl and a Batraxi officer could hold hands, and not fear being torn apart. They found it, eventually, a gas moon with no real name. Just ice and silence, but there were caves. And inside them, Echo sang freely. She taught Ashen Earth lullabies. He taught her Batraxi drum beats. They built a life out of whispers and music. And one day, when the stars finally came looking again, when the Concord sent its silver fleets to wipe out what they couldn't control, something strange happened. The fleet stopped, because she sang, and they listened. Maybe love doesn't win wars, but in the ruins of supremacy, where the old powers fell apart, the girl who sang and the boy who listened built something greater than power. They built peace. Ash rose like incense above the scorched ruins of the Zareth diplomatic outpost, where once stood crystalline towers that shimmered with dignified pride. Only jagged remnants remained. Smoke curled into the sky, and the silence was a scream of disbelief. On the edge of the crater, Laren stood, her cerulean skin smudged with soot, diplomatic robes shredded by fire and panic. Her translator module buzzed, trying to recalibrate in the interference haze. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from the memory of the human ship that had descended through the plasma storms like a god weapon. Why would they come back? She whispered to no one. And why now? Footsteps crunched behind her. She turned quickly, hand at the hilt of her blade, not out of habit, but desperation. I wouldn't move, came a voice. Smooth, worn like leather, but unmistakably human. He stepped forward through the smoke, tall, his features chiseled. Not handsome in the traditional Zareth way, but something deeper. His hair was the color of old ash, and his right arm shimmered faintly prosthetic, but advanced beyond anything in the current accord. I mean no harm, he said, raising both hands. I'm here for the survivors. You're one of them. Laren hissed. Human. He nodded once. And you're alive. Good. I was hoping someone from the Accord delegation made it. Why? She asked. His eyes locked on hers. Because we need someone to bear witness, and because I've seen enough death for a dozen lifetimes. His name was Reese, not captain, not commander, just Reese. He refused to give a title. They sat in what was left of the council chamber, moonlight spilling in through the broken dome. Laren kept her distance, but her curiosity betrayed her. He didn't behave like the monsters described in the old Accord files. He offered food, clean water, even wrapped her injured leg in synthetic cloth that cooled the skin beneath. Your fleet destroyed the summit, she said at last. Reese didn't flinch. We gave warning. To whom? To everyone who was listening, but most weren't. Laren's jaw tensed. They said your kind vanished, that you couldn't survive outside your death world. He smiled faintly. We learned. And then you came back to make war? His gaze was direct, not aggressive, just unshakably honest. No, we came back to end one. Over the next 3 days, they worked together, though trust came in layers. Laren learned more than she ever expected. Reese wasn't a soldier anymore, though he'd once led legions. His body bore the scars, burn marks, the prosthetic arm, and a limp in his right leg. But he spoke with gentleness, never raising his voice, never boasting. She caught him at night, standing on the edge of the outpost, staring up at the stars. Do you miss it? She asked. Miss what? Your home, Earth. He turned to her, the firelight catching the edge of his weathered face. There's no Earth anymore. She felt the chill ripple through her chest. But gone, burned, not by aliens, by us, by the things we allowed. That's why the fleet left, not to conquer, not to run, to protect what was left of us. We've watched for decades, hoping things would change. But instead, we saw the Accord grow fat off exploitation and war. So, now we speak. She said nothing. What could she say? The Accord had grown blind in its supremacy. The Zareth were diplomats, not warriors, but even she knew how many species the Accord had crushed or silenced beneath its golden seal. You said you came to end a war, she finally said. How he looked at her long, as if measuring the weight of the truth she could bear. By showing what fear truly is, not through annihilation, through clarity. And you think terror brings clarity? No. He stepped closer. But love does. The fire crackled between them, Her leg had begun to heal under the human medicine. Her mind, less so. She hated him for what he represented: death, unpredictability, imbalance. But in those quiet moments, she also saw what had drawn so many exiled species to humanity in the early days. Their boundless conviction, their terrifying capacity to hope. He poured her water from a canteen. Their fingers touched. "Why help me?" she asked. Reese shrugged. "I saw you running to help others when the blast started. You didn't run from the fire, you ran into it." She held his gaze. "Diplomats are taught to die before fleeing. Then you're the kind of person we need to survive." The words settled into her bones. One morning, the sky bloomed with silver arcs, human drop ships descending. Reese rose slowly. "They're coming for me. You're leaving." He nodded. This was a scouting mission. Extraction was scheduled. Once the perimeter was secure, Laren's throat tightened. She hadn't realized how accustomed she'd grown to his presence, or how her heartbeat quickened when he spoke her name. She rose with difficulty, stepping toward him. "Will they destroy more Accord worlds?" He hesitated. "Not unless they have to. We want peace." "You shattered our supremacy," she said softly. "There's no going back." "Maybe that's the point." He paused, then added, "You're not safe here. The Council will retaliate. But if you come with us, I can't." She whispered, "I'm Zareth. My people need someone who's seen what I've seen." Reese looked away. "Then maybe someday, when it's all calmed down." Her hand brushed his. "No promises," she said, "but a chance." He murmured, and then he kissed her quiet, without demand. It was a kiss of understanding, not possession, a soft parting before the storm. He left without fanfare. She watched the ship lift off, her hand resting on the warm rock where they'd shared their last meal. The air still held his scent: smoke and iron and something softer. When the Accord investigators arrived, she gave them her report, but she left out the kiss, and the fire behind his eyes, and the way she whispered his name once, after they were gone: Reese. The forest outside Eternine's northern dome was the last known wilderness, on the colony's surface, untouched, primal, and crawling with life that defied all standard xenobiological logic. Vines whispered warnings, trees bled, even the air shimmered, as though watching. No one ventured past the roots, except her. Toma. She was only half Death Worlder by blood, but all heart and bone had been forged by the horrors of planet Erevan, where even the rain burned and the soil screamed. Her mother had died there during a failed exodus. Her father, fully human, had clawed through ash and acid to rescue his infant daughter. She didn't remember that world, only the weight it left on her skin and in her voice. Toma spoke softly, not because she was timid, but because silence carried better in places that listened back. Now she stood barefoot at the tree line of the Screaming Woods, holding a bundle of tech shards and a wrapped fruit the color of bruised gold. Her task was simple: carry the offering deep into the heart of the forest, where the shrouded sensors failed and the colony's eyes could no longer follow. The forest didn't like being watched, but it remembered favors, and it remembered her. 10 days earlier, when the Council pleaded for help from the Death Worlders, Toma had been overlooked. She wasn't from the military faction that brought thunder and flame. She wasn't one of the diplomats who flung bloodied words across star systems. She was a scout. Worse, she was one of them, half colonist, tainted. Even the Etran-born whispered, feral when she passed. She didn't care. Toma's loyalty was never to the Council, not to the humans either. Not really. Her heart beat for the spaces between systems and charted zones. Quiet ruins, the creatures that didn't kill unless they had to. And the forest had never tried to kill her, even when she trespassed its sacred center 6 years ago to retrieve the missing son of a geneticist. The child had been buried in soft moss, sleeping against a trunk that wept honey. Toma had walked in, whispered a song, and walked out with him in her arms. No scratches, no madness, no marks. The forest had let her go. That was the start of her silence. The moment she knew she belonged to something else. Now, with war shadowing the horizon and enemy probes eating their way across the outposts, the Council was desperate. Their weapons couldn't reach deep enough. Their walls were too thin. The forest, they whispered, might help. Might save them. If she asked. Toma agreed, but not for the Council. For the girl she'd fallen in love with beneath that blood honey. Tree 6 years ago. Her name was Nili. She'd been the sister of the boy Toma had saved. Not human. Not fully alien either. Hybrid like her, grown in a lab to breathe poisons and decode spores like languages. But where Toma's soul was stitched with fury and stillness, Nili had sung when the stars came out. She touched shadows like they were silk. And when the children jeered at Toma for her rough hands and wild eyes, Nili had walked straight into the circle, cupped Toma's face, and kissed her cheek with no hesitation. Let them watch, she'd whispered. They watched every day since. And when the council exiled Nili's family, deemed them too unstable to splice, Toma followed them beyond the dome, into the roots, into the forest. No, Toma's offering was simple. She left the tech shards, the remains of a colonial drone scout at the base of the weeping tree. The gold fruit she placed beside it. And then, without turning her back, she stepped away and waited. The air changed, became full. Leaves unfolded from darkness. Roots shifted. Somewhere overhead, the sound of a breath not hers. Then a whisper. Toma. It wasn't a voice made from sound. It was grown, bloomed into her thoughts like pollen. She closed her eyes. I came to ask a favor, she said aloud, though she didn't need to. The forest heard. You are a child of broken fire. You do not speak for the ones behind glass. I speak for the ones who bled, Toma said. For those who were made, like me, like her. A pause. The canopy darkened. The warcrafters poisoned our borders. Toma nodded. They're coming for the dome. You can feel them, can't you? The ships, the machines. They'll scorch your roots and drain your rivers. Even you won't survive them. Why should we care for glass and steel? They never cared. For us, Toma exhaled. I know, she said. That's why I'm not asking you to save them. She opened her palm, revealing the final piece of the offering. A necklace, Nili's. Her voice was steady when she said, I'm asking you to help me protect her. Elsewhere, Nili hadn't stepped foot inside the dome for 5 years. But now they dragged her through its sterilized corridors, escorted by guards who looked everywhere but at her face. Her presence was a secret, her words forbidden. They didn't want to admit they needed her kind again, not after what they'd done to her family. But war shredded pride quickly. The forest's responding to movement, one counselor said. Vines are growing faster than sensors can track. We think it's Toma's doing something. Nili smiled despite herself. She's always doing something. They shoved her into a sealed chamber. A screen flickered on, and there she was. Toma, standing at the edge of a clearing, her back to the camera, her hand raised. Then dash movement. Massive. A shape rising. The forest split open. From beneath the moss, a creature unfurled, all bark and bone. A colossus, a titan. The screen vibrated as the cameras scrambled to adjust. The forest was moving. Marching. Double quotes. Is that? Someone choked. A weapon? No, Nili whispered, pressing her fingers to the glass. That's a promise. 3 days later they called it a miracle. The invading fleet never made landfall. Their scouts vanished in vines. Their drones went blind. The great war beast of the forest, nicknamed the Root Knight by terrified onlookers, stood guard. Outside the dome, UNMOVING. Untouched. No shot was fired. The enemy left. And Toma? She returned quietly, walked through the dome gates barefoot, her eyes like stone. They tried to interview her. She said nothing. Only when Nili met her outside the medic tent did her expression shift. They didn't kiss right away. They stood close. Let silence bloom between them. I gave them your name, Toma said at last. Nili tilted her head. I told the forest you were worth saving. Nili stepped forward, touched her face like the girl she'd once kissed in defiance. Was I? Toma leaned in. You still are. And the forest watched. And the trees did not scream. The moons of Thalos 7 hung low in the scarlet sky, their light silvering the broken ground where once a city had stood. Now, only scorched husks of towers remained. Dust settled where life had tried to take root again. Nyan stood at the edge of the crater, her breath caught in her throat. It had been 10 years since she'd last stood on this ground. Back then, this had been a thriving refugee outpost, her outpost. She'd overseen medical aid, water routing, the distribution of painkillers and warmth and blankets, and hope. Then the Zerati raiders had come. and the Death Worlders had followed. Now, nothing remained but ashes and her own failure. "Nyan," said a voice behind her, soft and deep. "You're trembling." She turned. A man stood there, his silhouette framed by the crescent of Thalus's twin moons. He wore lightweight battle armor. Though his helmet was clipped to his belt, he had pale skin scarred at the jawline, with dark hair and the strange, mismatched eyes of a Death Worlder, one gray, one gold. "Liar," she said. "I didn't expect you to come. You asked," he said simply. "So I came." Nyan looked away. 10 years, and we never spoke again. I was healing. He stepped forward, hands at his sides. "You were running. That's how we survived." She didn't argue, because it was true. The Death Worlders had torn through the Zerati like the vengeance of old gods, brutal and surgical. Nyan had watched from the top of the command center as entire regiments burned in blue fire. But she had also seen what came after, the price of such power. The Death Worlders hadn't just come for war. They'd come for justice. And justice didn't ask who was innocent, it simply leveled everything. "Why now?" Lyra asked. "Why come back here?" Nyan crouched beside a crumbled piece of ferrocrete, brushing off a broken medallion. Her own name was etched on its edge. "I need to forgive myself." Lyra was silent. "I left people behind. Patients, families, children. I told them the Death Worlders would save them. And then I ran. You think I don't know that guilt?" Lyra said, "We didn't come to save. We came to finish something. We never started." Nyan looked at him sharply. "Then why did you carry me out of the flames?" He smiled faintly. "Because I loved you, even if you hated me for what I was." Her throat tightened. "I never hated you. You feared me. I feared what you could do, what your people did. There's a difference." Lyra stepped closer. "We never wanted your galaxy. We only came because your people opened the gate and dragged our ghosts through. We lost our homeworld to Zerati scouts. Before your alliance even realized we existed, you thought we were monsters. But we were just wounded." Nyan's gaze softened. In the early days, the Death Worlders had seemed like demons of metal and wrath. Their world was a nightmare, gravity thrice normal, atmospheric lightning storms, predators the size of buildings. No one thought humans had survived their until they did, until they returned. She'd met Lyre during triage at a battlefield encampment orbiting Valkaros. He'd arrived carrying 3 children and a dying Zerati infant, bloodied and burning. She remembered the way he had refused pain meds, how he'd flinched from nothing but the crying. That night, she realized the Death Worlders were not machines. They were just men and women who had lived through too much fire. She reached out, now fingers brushing his wrist. "I never said thank you. You never had to." His voice was low. "You survived. I didn't want to. I know." Silence stretched between them, not cold, but weighted. Finally, Lyre looked past her to the broken crater. "You wanted to bury them." "Yes." He pulled a compact from his belt, a small cube etched with nanosilver inscriptions. "They'll be remembered." Nyan knelt and set the cube in the center of the ruin. Her fingers trembled as she activated the beacon. A soft blue light glowed outward, pulsing once, twice, then formed a pillar of memory. Holographic faces shimmered above the device, flickering in and out. She could see Elen, her assistant with the nervous laugh, Lura, who'd sung lullabies during injections, Elder Marin, who'd made soup even during bombardments. They were all gone, except for this. "They died because of my trust," she whispered. "No," Lyre said. "They died because your trust was betrayed." The light of the memory pillar wavered. For a moment, it looked like a flame. "They called you vengeance incarnate," she said. "But you still held my hand. You were the only one who didn't flinch when you looked at me." His voice cracked. "You were the only one who saw my scars and didn't run." Nyan turned to him. "I ran from the world, not from you." Lyre's breath caught. She reached up, brushing his jaw. "You found me again. I won't run this time." The stars began to shimmer above them as night took the ruins in full, and in the light of memory, the last of the Death Worlders and the last medic of Thalus knelt beside their ghosts, dashed together. 3 months later, orbit of Dalasari. Independent Zonoth reconstruction station floated above the jungle world. Sleek and full of activity, Nyan moved through the docking bay with confidence again. Her uniform was new silver and violet, marked with the emblem of independent aid. Her hair was tied back, her steps were steady, and Liar was already waiting at the airlock. "Did the supplies arrive?" she asked. He nodded. "With enough antibiotics for the whole sector." She smiled. "Then let's not waste time." They walked side by side. Dalasari had been untouched by war, but not by disease. The arrival of rogue spores from the drift worlds had decimated two of its outlying villages. Nyan had been the first to volunteer. Liar had volunteered to carry her packs. "You know you don't have to follow me everywhere," she teased as the shuttle lifted off. He glanced at her, expression unreadable. "I don't follow you. I walk beside you." Her smile faltered for only a second. "I like that." The shuttle descended through atmosphere, engines humming. Below, forests glittered like emerald veins. Sunlight pierced through clouds. "I used to dream of this," Nyan whispered. "Not the war, or the death, or the fear. Just healing. You're doing it." "No, we are." He reached across the seat, took her hand. Outside, the world turned gold. 6 months later, Memorial Station. Orbit of Earth. They stood together at the window, looking down on the world that had once been called a myth. Earth had returned to the map, and with it, the truth of what Death Worlders were. Not monsters, not myths. Just people. Below, cities were being rebuilt with alien alloys and human resolve. Forests replanted with seeds from 5 galaxies, and bridges raised between species that had once fired on sight. They're calling it the cycle's end. Nyan murmured. Lior stood beside her. "Or the beginning." She turned toward him. There were no more weapons between them, no war behind them. "Just quiet. I never thought I'd find peace with someone like you," she said. "Not because you're Death Worlder, but because I didn't believe I deserved it." "You do," he said simply. "And you?" "I stopped believing in peace a long time ago, until I met you." They kissed beneath the stars, and behind them, the monument lit for the fallen, both Death Worlder and alien alike. Final transmission. "They came with thunder and flame. We feared them. We hated them. We called them Death Worlders. But when our cities burned, and our treaties failed, and our gods fell silent, they came anyway. They did not bring mercy. They brought justice. And in the ashes of that justice, they brought love. We will never forget. We will never let it happen again."